All right, next one. So, hi, I'm Kate. I'm the Executive Director of the Hoellein Park Development Council, and if this is your first event with us, thanks for coming. Tonight, we're gonna show first up the food is over there. Everybody signed in, and we're gonna talk a little bit about some things that are going in the neighborhood, and then I'm gonna turn it over to our guest speaker, Tim, over here, who's gonna talk about trash in the river and the new trash trap coming to the river. And we try to show a few features. So one of the signs of spring that happened this month and like hopefully eventually summer is that the park district is trying some new plantings out in McKinley Park on the Damen Island, where they have a bunch of different treatments and they're experimenting to see like which plants are going to be happiest there under real world conditions where humans and dogs are running around, and sometimes some of the areas are going to get mowed and some are not, to see how these plants can live alongside existing grass. So that's a 2-year project, and it'll be kind of fun to watch. So a couple other things. We do have some small business opportunities happening in the neighborhood. We've had a lot of grant money coming in. So these are opportunities to fix up our commercial corridor. We've been really focused on 35th Street, but this next opportunity is going to be more for Archer and Western. We do want to spread the love. And so if you know anybody who owns a business in that area, they may be eligible for construction costs, for assistance with construction costs for renovations, up to 90% of their costs. And we would be happy to help them fill out that application and get more information about it. So this opportunity opens on July 1st and closes on July 30th. And then we're also still working the previously announced opportunity, which focuses on the 35th Street corridor. This is for larger projects. But the idea is to make improvements on 35th Street and between 35th Street and the L to try and make the corridor a friendlier place to be, both for by improving the businesses, then hopefully we also improve a lot of conditions for residents. And this opportunity is a revolving window. They take our applications quarterly. So the next opportunity to apply will be in August. We can also help anybody who's interested to fill out that application. So this was a surprise this week at the Damen Silos. They have paved over the property and set it up as a parking lot. We looked through public records and there is no permit, so we have reported it, and we'll share more information as we have it, but that's where it is now. So the next thing we'll be doing is to try and get some better photos just to kind of track the situation. Some of you may remember that we kept a photo blog during the demolition of the silos, so we'll be adding photos as whatever's happening now happens. And public art. So, permitting. There's a lot of, we really do hope that we will be able to get murals up soon. We are working with CDOT to get the permits so that we can get the art up, but we want to certainly get things going while the weather, weather's not operating today, but generally speaking, warmer weather is a good time to paint a mural. And so we are working on that. And as soon as we get the permits, we'll start to actually see things. But this is for the commercial corridor, primarily between the L and 35th Street and on 35th Street. And I thought this was a great picture of Audio and Annika with measuring tape, kind of checking everything out. This was also something that came up at our last meeting, so just want to give you an update. We don't have a final anything yet, but there was a proposed strip mall in Ashland and Pershing, and there were some issues with the proposal that it didn't meet code requirements, which made a very interesting public meeting about it. But the alderwoman of the 11th ward, this is the 11th ward, so Alderwoman Lee is now working with the developer, and we saw her last week with some sketches for ways to make it work. So the issue was primarily that this was the original proposal. These curb cuts don't work. You can't get in and out of Ashland and Pershing. And code requires the entrance to the storefronts is at the sidewalk. Instead of having a suburban strip mall
with the parking lot in front, the code requires that the entrance is on the sidewalk, so it's look like you're supposed to walk there. So it's a solvable problem and is moving in the right direction, and as we get more information about that. The Alderwoman did offer to have a new public meeting once the new design is sorted out, so we'll let people know about that opportunity when it happens. Questions about any of this? Okay. Then I also wanted to take a minute to share some things about the storefront guidelines, because when we talked about it in the last couple of meetings, people had questions. So just wanted to show a couple of examples. This also came up when we were talking about renovations on 35th Street, and people were like, whoa, 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 you know, what are these standards that you're going to hold people to? But these are the city standards, and they're really basic. They're nothing crazy. So I wanted you guys to see them. So the standards, for example, like, you know, having amenities, having a sidewalk cafe that allows for people to walk by, using the space in front, you know, as something that invites pedestrians, invites people to walk in, having nice landscaping, you know, using the space, basically just using the space well in a way that invites people to walk in and makes it a nice place to be. And so these are some examples from the document of various patios. And then the next slide. And then this is a little bit about entries. So here's the example of the entry must be on the sidewalk. So it looks like you're supposed to walk there. And then, you know, putting the less pleasant things like your trash and any noisy equipment in the back, where you hide that stuff in a service area. Making sure that things are well lit, that signage is easy to see, that you can find the address. So these are basic things. And then, sorry, I'm missing something. Oh, and also talking about, you know, the service industry, making sure it's safe for the staff and anybody else who needs to go in and out in the back. And so you can see several examples here of, you know, various ways that you can do that. Some of these look like our storefronts. Like we have a lot of these, used to be a corner bar storefronts, right, in McKinley Park. And we have a lot of, you know, things maybe that kind of look like this, where you could have the larger plate glass so that you can see in and you can see what's happening inside and hopefully invite more customers in that way. And then this last one is kind of more about that, about like what makes an inviting facade. Maybe you want to have, you know, some visual interest, arts. I love that they included a Tide house, you know, Rip Schlitz. And talking about some of these, we have quite a few that kind of look like this too, right? Where you have the two glass panels in the center door with the inset, so you don't, instead of an awning. So yeah, happy to take any questions about this, but I wanted people to see it so you can see it's not overly prescriptive, right? These are basic things that look like a lot of the storefronts we already have. Questions, comments, anything? Okay. Annika's also been putting together some social media content about these, so we can look for more there. Yeah.
I'm just curious about the strip mall, like that's new construction, and what kind of businesses would go there?
That is an excellent question. So they're building them on spec. It'll be either 9 or 10 spaces, depending on how it works out with the final arrangement on the lot. They're saying that they're talking to professionals. Like they said, they've got interest from a dentist or a doctor. So those would be community assets. A lot of people are interested in having a convenience store. That's fine. There's nothing in that part of the neighborhood. They were adamant that they don't want to deal with any sin-based businesses, so like no vape shops or that kind of thing. So it's open. One of the things that we would like to do from where we sit is also we are working to build a pipeline of neighborhood entrepreneurs, because we would like for as many as possible of our neighborhood businesses to be owned by people who live here. So if you know anybody who might be interested in opening a storefront, we hope that with all the construction funds that are coming in, and maybe with this new building and some others, it will have a lot of opportunity for small entrepreneurs, you know, to take up a new space in the next year or two. And so one of the things that we want to do is to connect people to training opportunities and other educational opportunities, business planning, all of those kinds of resources to make a successful business. So yeah, we're definitely angling for mom and pops. All right, and now it's Tim's turn.
All
Give you 1 sec. We're gonna switch decks here. His slides were a different size, so it didn't work to just leave it alone. All right. Okay, all yours. So folks, this is Tim from Loyola, who's gonna talk to us about trash.
You guys are good sports for talking about trash on a Wednesday evening. So I hope I can make this interesting, useful, compelling. I'm in the biology department at Loyola and have been working on this issue related to freshwater conservation and litter in our freshwaters for a while. So you click, okay, great. So I start with this picture because I saw this online. This was back in the old days of Twitter. But I followed that group of people who study reptiles, and there's this amazing picture. This is a picture of a cobra that has bitten a python. So the python is dying of the cobra venom, and the python strangled the cobra to death. Kind of this incredible picture of these two big snakes. They fought each other to the death. They're both dead, and they killed each other. And it's amazing, right? In terms of like biology and like it being savage and really interesting. And there are a lot of comments about the snake on the website, but if you click again, this is the actual picture as it appeared. You can see the snake's bodies there. Someone encountered these two snakes. And a lot of the comments were about the snakes and how cool they were, but I was also looking at the background of this picture, and it looks like it's in a ditch or something, and it's covered in trash. And I think this is a good example of how we've all come to take in the environment. We see these natural things which are so interesting, but the background, where there's this pervasive human impact of trash everywhere, it just kind of fades from our vision because it's all over the place. We kind of stop seeing it. If you click again, this is a picture of a friend of mine. They're working in a stream on some chemicals in the stream. So they're taking water samples, but you can see, when you just look at the stream, there's another problem in the stream besides just the chemicals in there. There's just a ton of trash. And so, if you look again, we've been doing this in urban streams, but this is a global issue. This is a picture of an island in the Pacific. No one lives on the island. No one actually lives anywhere close to this island, but the beaches are totally covered in trash because of the way that the global ocean currents are moving the material around. We've been working on this topic to try to measure what's out there so we can better understand how to contribute to some solutions. The trash we find, we sometimes call anthropogenic litter, that just means from people, or marine debris, it's called sometimes. It's all of this stuff. You can see it's a wide variety of materials. There's glass, there's metal, there's plastic, lots of different shapes. And some of this stuff is a mixture of all sorts of different materials. So it's really variable in size and composition. But a lot of what we find in the environment is plastic. We all know what plastic is, but in fact, plastic is a lot of different things also. Plastic, if you think about like this chair maybe, it's made of what we call a polymer. The polymer is like the skeleton of the material. It's like the bones. And that has words that you probably hear now and then, like polyethylene, polyurethane, polypropylene. That's the skeleton. But within those skeleton or within the bones, there's lots of other chemicals kind of stuck in. Those are called additives. And those additives give the finished product different properties. There's dyes and colorants. There's also chemicals that are added to make the material more flexible, or some of them to make them heat resistant. And those chemical additives can make up to 50% of the weight of the finished product. So a piece of plastic is the polymer and lots of other chemicals stuck in it. We of course use our plastics for a zillion different things as part of our contemporary life. And we measure them in the environment when we find them by size and by color and by shape. All right, one of the words that you may have heard or is kind of in the news or is floating around in the press is the term microplastic. Microplastic at the high end, the large size is 5 millimeters. You can think about that maybe like a 1/4 inch or so. So some microplastic is visible, you can still see it. And then some of it is really much smaller. It'll be invisible, tiny little pieces of plastic. Plastic breaks down, so we find microplastic that are fragments of larger pieces of plastic. So for example, if you've ever found a water bottle or some other piece of trash that's been out in the environment a long time, it gets faded and it gets kind of brittle. The sunlight actually breaks down some of those polymers, and it breaks into smaller and smaller pieces, and we find those fragments out in the environment. Also, we don't always think about it, but we wear a lot of plastic. Many of our clothes are made of synthetic textiles like polyester, or acrylic, and those plastic fibers, when they break, a little piece of thread comes off, and that is actually a piece of plastic as well. So for example, the carpet in here is made of probably synthetic textiles, and little pieces are breaking off and floating around in the air. Those are microplastics that are synthetic fibers from these textiles. Then some plastics are made to be small, so they come in micro form kind of intentionally. Some microplastics are added to soaps and cosmetics, and we put them on our face or on our bodies, they wash down the drain. And then when a manufacturer is building a piece of plastic, a plastic manufacturing facility buys its plastic often in these form of these small pellets, pre-production pellets or nurdles. These are melted down to make larger things like a plastic toy or a plastic chair. And these escape in the environment, so we find them in things as well. So microplastic is also a lot of different things coming from many different sources. And of course, I think we're familiar with what the impacts of trash in the environment are. You see things like this. So when animals or other wildlife get entangled or wrapped up or eat plastic, I think we've all seen pictures with like turtles or seahorses or maybe dolphins. That happens in the ocean, but it also happens in fresh waters as well. This is from the Chicago River, for example. This stuff is all tangled up. We know that there's things that live on the trash surfaces, the microbes and the algae. There are also, we found this crayfish in shoe in the Chicago River. There are some things that live in the trash as a habitat. And then there are some negative economic and human health impacts. Trash affects things like the aesthetic value of our environment, so it can influence tourism, recreation. As a community, we pay for trash removal throughout our city, including our public spaces, and so that costs us money. If people weren't littering, we wouldn't have to pay for it, so that's a cost for us. There are stormwater influences too. I'm sure on days like this, you see that stormwater rates get backed up, and that's from leaf litter and other natural materials, but also trash that's blocking our drainage, and that has a cost to us as taxpayers as well. And then finally, the way that we deal with our trash in much of the sort of industrialized or Western world is we ship it to other parts of the world, to other places. This is a common thing that the US has done, especially with plastics that we can't recycle. We send them in the past mostly to China, now more so to Southeast Asia. That plastic has harmful chemicals associated with it, and the people that are forced to deal with our waste are sort of subject to the kind of unjust impacts of dealing with the trash that we ship overseas. So those are some of the impacts. Yeah. All right, one of the reasons I think this has been a topic in scientific research, but also just among the public in general, is that there is more trash, there is more litter out there than there used to be. So this is a graph showing the amount of plastic waste that's been generated in the world. Starting about 1950, this one goes up to about 2050. And the point of it is to say that almost every year, there's more plastic waste produced than the year before. So it's not just sort of increasing, but in fact, the amount of waste we're producing is accelerating. And we expect that acceleration to happen through 2050. All right, so in the work that we've been doing with students and community members and colleagues at Loyola is to collect the trash, to go out and pick it up so that we can better understand a couple of really basic questions. What we want to know is how much is out there, where is it, and what kinds. We want to also try to measure how it's moving through the ecosystem and how it interacts with living things in the environment. And so we've been doing this for a number of years, working with students, scientists, and especially with community members that are out there. We have lots of volunteers in our community that pick up trash, and we can collaborate with them to better understand what we've done. So I want to show you just a little bit of the work that we've done. We've done some beach cleanups, some river cleanups, and then a trash trap project. So one of the really big programs we have here in the city and throughout the Great Lakes is with the a nonprofit group called Alliance for the Great Lakes. They do really nice programming about education, conservation of our Great Lakes neighborhoods, but also they do these trash pickups. They have a program called Adopt a Beach. If you want to do it, go on their website, and there's one happening almost every weekend. And what's nice is the volunteers are out picking up trash, so they're taking it from the beach, but they're also writing down what they find, and so we can look at those records to better understand how the trash has changed over the years. So, let's see. This is a project a student of mine did who looked at the litter composition for some beaches in Illinois and then Great Lakes beaches in New York. You click again here. I just want to simplify it because it's really all the same patterns across all these beaches. We categorize these by food, smoking, tiny trash is a category they use, or little fragments. Waterway, which is like boating and fishing, derived trash, medical, dumping of household materials from facilities. And if you click again here, what you see, almost all the trash we're finding on the beaches is food related, smoking related, and then small fragments. So that's what it says here. 75%, we look across all these different beaches, we're finding trash that's evidence of people hanging out, eating, drinking, smoking, littering on our beaches. We find that trash there, and a lot of small stuff. Sorry. All right, we worked with the Shed Aquarium on and this group called Urban Rivers on a group about kayaking for conservation. These are people that like to kayak on the river, and they pick up trash, and they write down what they find, so we can see what's out there. Click on this. We've analyzed some of the volunteer data for a couple of years. This is 2020 to 2023. Here's our materials. If you just click on it, I'll simplify this. Pretty similar patterns every year. In this graph, we have it by material type. So plastic is green, and then styrofoam or expanded polystyrene, which is also plastic, is in dark green. And then you've got things like metal, paper, etc. So the take-home point here is that in the river, most of our trash is plastic. We do find a lot of trash that's plastic, and a good portion of that is foamed plastic or expanded polystyrene. Okay. And then here's one of our trash traps. We have this new program. I'll tell you about it more in just a moment. This was our pilot project. This is a little garbage can, like the size of maybe like a kitchen trash can. It has a motor in it, and it's submerged under the water, and it just draws sort of the floating material into its collection bin, and then it expels the water out the bottom. The group Friends of the Chicago River purchased this, and the architecture cruise company, Wendella Cruises, which is right at the Wrigley Building downtown, they installed it in their dock. And so for about 3 years, we had students going down and getting this trash once a week. They would take it on the train back to our lab in Rogers Park, and then pick through it, count everything, and we've been analyzing those trends. So I've got a little bit of data to show you about that. Here's what it looks like. Here's the students dumping out the trash, drying it, sorting it, counting everything. Let's look at the next one. So this is for one fall. We just click on it. I'll simplify this again. Similar patterns here. In this case, we've got small trash in gray, fragments in this kind of red color, then food-related and smoking-related trash. So lots of pieces, fragments of trash, and then also food-related and food meaning food and drink related, as well as smoking-related trash. All right, among the small trash, I thought this was a little interesting nugget. We have a couple of different categories that we look at. If you click on one more time on the pictures here. We find lots of small little pieces. Some of them we categorize as fragments, meaning like hard pieces. Some are foam. You can see the, looks like obviously pieces of styrofoam. We've got film here, which we think of as thin pieces for like food wrappers or bags. And then we have this item here, which we call a nurdle. This is the pre-production pellet. These are discs or cylinders that are really uniformly shaped. And these are used in plastic manufacturing to make plastic items. They're the raw ingredients, but they spill, they escape. We find them all over the place. And in the Chicago River, right downtown, we find about 50 a week in this heated trash, which is surprising, because I don't think there's any plastic manufacturing facilities downtown. So where's it coming from? We don't know, but they're certainly really mobile and really persistent. Right. Here's another picture of what those nurdles look like. To me, this is we're pursuing this in a few other projects because this is a place where we have an opportunity for new laws that will restrict the release of these materials into the environment and hopefully reduce the emissions. I'm going to just skip ahead. We found lots of minerals in the environment. I want to tell you about the trash trap network, which includes a site here. So for the past couple of years, we've been working with Friends of the Chicago River, Chicago Park District, Mandela, Community Park Development Council, Harrow, a bunch of different groups that have an interest in community organization, activation, environmental conservation. And we had this season right downtown for a couple of years. We were able to look at the data from that, write a grant to NOAA, which is a federal agency that sponsors some of this work. And we were funded to sort of increase our network of trash traps. We're going to have trash traps in some of the harbors in Lake Michigan, and then a few in the river, including in the North Branch here at Urban River site at North Avenue, and then down here at Park 571, Canal Orchards Park, who have a trap as well. The idea is that all of these would be a way to remove some trash from the river and from our harbors, but also a way to better understand what kinds of trash is there. We can analyze the composition. We're in a better position to understand what kinds of messages, what kinds of policy actions are needed at these various places within our network. So we're getting this off the ground. Our funding has been slow to arrive. It may not be surprising to hear that the federal government is messed up in many ways in terms of lots of ways, but also including scientific funding and funding for environmental conservation. But it's coming, and we'll be installing these, including one here. What we hope to do at this trap is to have people involved, people who are interested, participate in helping us move the trash, categorize it, better understand what problems might be specific to this particular juncture and location in the river, which we don't have a lot of data for, so that we can be better positioned to offer some advice. Like, what should we do? What's the next step to really make a positive impact? So stay tuned to that, and thanks to our partners here for helping us set that up. In the next slide, I wrap it up here with a kind of philosophy. So I like to end on this just so we can sort of be on the same page about what all of this information means. I think we first have to agree on some facts, which is that litter or trash, plastic in the environment is really a global problem. It's all over the world, and it's pervasive to all parts of the world. The isolated mountaintops, the deepest parts of the ocean, our urban waterways, it's everywhere. It's increasing in abundance, and on the scale of a couple of human lifetimes, it's a permanent feature of the environment. So we have to accept those as facts. The litter has negative effects on the environment, has negative effects on humans and economies, and those effects are often distributed in ways that are very clearly unjust. And that, those of you who would come out here and listen to a presentation on a Wednesday evening, I would guess you're probably not the people that just throw your water bottles out into the river. I hope, probably you're not. I don't think of myself that way. But the thing is, we all live in this culture of consumption and disposal, and we're all a part of that system. We just can't escape. So collectively, we are responsible to some degree for the litter that we're generating. We can then also be a part of the solution. Okay, so then to move forward, what I think we need to do is, I'm in the interest of really trying to better understand the problem, so have more data, more information is useful, so that we can prioritize action and education and policy, and explore all the potential solutions that might entail. Some of that might be the fact that we just need new materials, new inventions of new materials that are more recyclable, more compostable, more friendly to the environment and our bodies. Also, educational and cultural practices that we can help to kind of collectively behave in a new way. And then there's a role for the government here to have new policies. These are taxes, they're bans, they're fees, they're restrictions on the companies that are producing these materials and are not paying for their environmental impacts. These are all potential solutions. And that we can do it. There's some good evidence to suggest that change is possible. This is happening in some other countries, and there's some real positive environmental impacts without negative economic impacts, so that we can do this as well. And it involves a collective action, a sense of optimism, of inclusion, and understanding we'll do what we can when we can, and try to do better. That's what we're all here for. That's the end. Questions as well?
I have seen, I'm surprised by the amount of styrofoam.
Yeah.
Like, why is there so much styrofoam? Where is that coming from? I mean, we don't use styrofoam in our day-to-day as much, at least nowadays. Is it just accumulated from previous things or, yeah?
Yeah. So styrofoam is foamed polystyrene. It's, or there's some other foam polymers that are out there. A lot of what we see, we think is from food and beverage packaging. You know, when we encounter the styrofoam, oftentimes it's as a small little piece. So that little piece of styrofoam could be from a cup or from a, what we call a clamshell, those food packaging ones, or it could be potentially from like styrofoam peanuts that you use in packages, or in docks use styrofoam a lot. So we can't always tell exactly where it's coming from. So there's a variety of different sources, but given that we find a lot of other food and smoking and drinking related materials, we think a lot of the styrofoam is also food packaging. And so food packaging styrofoam is used for especially cups and like more food storage. There was just before the pandemic, so maybe 2018 or so, there was a state law proposed to eliminate styrofoam packaging in food containers, and it seemed pretty promising. We had collected all this volunteer data from the river, and I was able to give them our graphs that about 30% of the stuff we were finding was styrofoam. But the pandemic happened, and the lawmakers didn't want to put any undue restrictions on restaurants at that time to make them try to change their I guess, materials of purchasing that. So it's like canceled. But then in the last couple of years, it came back, and the state law now that passed is that any food industry contracts that occur with the state can't use styrofoam. So it's not a statewide ban, but it is related to state government operations. And there's an interest in reviving that to a statewide ban. This has happened in Maryland and some communities in California. And there's been a decrease in the amount of styrofoam in the environmental problems. So who knows what will happen here related to policy. It's certainly in the mix of these discussions. It's believed to be one of the more environmentally sort of toxic materials because it's very persistent, it's long-lived, it's super buoyant, so it can go a long distance, and then it can absorb other chemical contaminants that are in the water. So it can absorb things like oil or PCBs that are kind of hydrophobic or don't like to be dissolved in water. So then if they're consumed, those chemicals can be delivered to something like a fish or a bird.
Every so often in the news, I feel like there's this story that, you know, tries to create this sense of optimism, like bacteria going to eat plastic, or robots going out to clean up plastic, or the saltwater soluble plastic, all these things. And I'm curious, is there anything on the horizon that gives you a genuine sense of optimism, or do you feel like the dynamics we have now are going to what's going to basically be for the long-term or like short-term future?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you do hear about this. There are microbes, bacteria, fungi that can break down plastic polymers because the polymers are derived largely from oil, fossil fuels, and there are microbes that can decompose oil and other fossil fuels. That's a natural material that exists. So those enzymes exist. The problem is it's not very nutritious for those microorganisms. So it's a very slow process. The same is true for plastic. So I don't think we can count on biological degradation to be a viable pathway to eliminating trash. Similarly, you hear about, these robots that are out in the ocean, or even our trash traps. We're trying to perhaps pull some trash out. That can be perhaps a little bit of help, but compared to the magnitude of material out there, it's a relatively small fraction. So I think of those as kind of indicators that help us better understand the community of trash, rather than like ultimately solutions to removing trash. So really what we think about is reducing the supply, turning off the tap, so to speak. Introducing less litter to the environment is ultimately the solution to less litter. So that involves lots of different products, lots of different pathways, and so it probably involves lots of different policies, lots of different bans, substitutions, and that's a very slow process. The one reason I think we could have optimism is with the Great Lakes data, the Alliance for the Great Lakes. We find a ton of cigarette beaches in there, or cigarette butts on the beaches. People like to smoke at the beach, there's cigarette butts there, we find a lot of them. But they've been doing this program now for maybe 25 years or more. And when we look at the amount of cigarette butts over time, it's actually going down. So there are fewer cigarette butts on the beach than there used to be, even though there's still a lot. And that's similar to the smoking rates nationally. The cigarette smoking rates have gone down over that same period. And the reason the smoking rates have gone down is because of all of the policies and educational practices that have gone on to reduce smoking. So that's taxes on the cigarettes, that's bans on where you can smoke, all the information that's on the packaging. That's taken decades, right, to cause an effect, and that's on one product. So I think we're faced with a real challenge with all these other ones, but the cigarette butt idea gives us perhaps some optimism that it's possible. Does that answer your question?
No, no, there's nothing in particular, just like a slow change across the board, that's, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they'd have to be directed at lots of different products.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Can plastic be like recycled like over and over, or can it only be recycled like several times? before
That's a great
it's
question. Yeah, you think of recycling as like an aluminum can, for example. Aluminum is an element, and you can turn it into another aluminum can and it works just as well. Same kind of thing happens with glass. Glass can be broken down, melted, and turned into another piece of glass. Plastic doesn't really work that way. It can be melted down and converted into something else, but it's usually a downgrade in quality. So a plastic bottle can't be turned into another plastic bottle. Instead, it tends to be turned into something like fabric or textiles, or they might use it for like insulation. So it kind of has a limited number of times it can be recycled into something else because it can never go back into exactly the same thing as before. Yeah, and you know, that's only true for some types of plastic. Some other types of plastics, like styrofoam, for example, really can't be recycled at all. So they're just trash. Great question.
Really curious about these trash traps. So do we have them in other cities? Are there other programs that gather data about it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. There's a group called the International Trash Trap Network. If you're interested, you can Google this. It's run by a colleague of mine in Toronto, University of Toronto. So they put out a few of these trash traps and then have tried to collaborate with people around the world that might be installing these traps, really with an interest in generating data and engaging people, ultimately, hopefully informing policy and perhaps even quantifying policy impacts. So, you know, those nurdles I showed you, they, just this summer, there's been a state policy to regulate them as pollutants. Prior to that, they were not regulated as pollutants. Now they will be. So I think, you know, we'll be in a position to use like the trash trap to see, are we going to see less of them in the environment? And that would be a great way to assess a change in policy. Not that we had that planned, but because we were monitoring the trash for a couple of years, we can now keep it up and see what that might look like. So it's a really nice organization that you can check it out.
I had a question about the EP water plants that are in our lake in Michigan and stuff. Do you have an idea if they have been updated and stuff to better filtrate our water and lake and stuff, or are they still working on it and set hush hush?
The drinking water treatment facilities?
Yes, the water plant,
Those big, yeah,
plantations.
you look out on the lake, you see those big intake facilities.
Yes.
Yeah, they're taking in the lake water and sending it to the water treatment facility right by Navy Pier.
Yes,
So
all
most
those
of
plants
yeah.
that they have.
Yeah, they run it through a system of filtration and sterilization. So we use chlorine to sterilize the water. You may even smell it sometimes out of the tap. And they add fluoride and they try to get rid of all of the
Right, because they've been, some things on Facebook haven't been accurate, like, how can I say, the cyber attacks. People are trying to, take advantage of the equipment that was made in the, timeline and era of the water filtration plants. A lot of people were worried and like suggesting like, well, why can't we update those? Where's all the government money going to ridiculousness and, you know, where it needs to be. So there's a lot of outrage and concern, like, well, is somebody there guarding the facility?
Yeah.
Is anybody working? Anybody care?
Right, all of us are using that water every day, so
Right,
we want
right.
it to be clean. And certainly there's a long list of chemicals that they have to check
The
for
forever stuff.
in the drinking water, but there's some chemicals that are in our water that they don't have to check.
Right.
I can't speak to the security or cyber attacks. I know that that's a major concern for people. If that water facility is like a subject of some physical or cyber attack, we would all be really
Doomed.
Yeah. So hopefully that security is happening. But in terms of the laws related to the chemistry of the water, there's many chemicals that they have to test for, and it has to meet regulations. There are other chemicals though that are just sort of newly on the horizon that aren't regulated. One of them is these so-called forever chemicals, or
Yes.
PFAS. It's a group of chemicals that have halogens, some dangerous like elements in there. There was a move to regulate those under the previous president, and that has been abandoned as far as I understand it now. What will happen to that, I don't know. There's also microplastic in the lake, and there's microplastic in our drinking water as well, and it's not something that's measured or regulated by any law. Meaning they don't have to remove it, and they don't have to measure what's in it, because it's just not part of our governance. There's only one state, as far as I know, that it is, it's California. This is a relatively new law where they have a microplastic in drinking water standard. And it's taken many years for them to come up with that law because it also took a long time to agree on the method to use to measure plastic. But now that that's in place, I can see that spreading to potentially some other states. Because that's often the way this kind of legislation works. In a place like California that's progressive, they can pass it and then it can be sort of spread. So right now, there is microplastic in our treated drinking water. We measure it in our lab, which is in Orange Park. And we have to filter our tap water to use in our microplastic measurements. Because there's microplastic. That's just, it's just in there. Yeah. Yeah, I hope that those laws evolve and get to be strict, because we all want clean water. We all need it.
Yes.
I mean, every day, every couple of hours at least. So,
Yeah.
we rely on our government to provide that for us. So, yeah, hopefully that priority is met.
Well, boiling the water when we drink it, does that help filter anything or does any of the microplastics?
Possibly, but it might just break them into smaller pieces, you know? So it's
Because I mean,
really,
they tell you drink so much water every day,
I
but
know.
are you really drinking something that's gonna make you more sick or more healthy or be any,
Right.
you know? Even I have a water filter my son bought, you know, but I don't know if it's a good water filter. I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
So it's just like, what are you feeding your kids or what are we, you know, consuming ourselves?
Exactly. I think it's worth asking those questions for sure. And boiling we think of as a sterilization issue. And so we don't have a problem. Our water is sterile. It's been chlorinated. Some people don't like the chlorine that's in there, but it is sterile. So boiling is really, that's ultimately what that's for. To get out the forever chemicals, the PFAS group of chemicals or microplastics, it's filtration. So if you have a filter in your faucet or under your sink or attached to your refrigerator, that is really the best way to remove those particles and those large compounds like PFAS. And then keeping kind of up with that filter as well. And I know that's an extra cost, and not everyone can do it, and I wish it wasn't the case, but that's really the best.
I think that's where some of the funding, what I would put it in for like low-income families, you know, to have at least a filter in the
Yeah.
sink.
Yeah, exactly. You can get them kind of installed under the sink, and then you're not dealing with any pitchers or other devices, and they're
But
relatively.
I've seen some, but they're kind of pricey.
Yeah, they can get expensive, and then you gotta replace the.
Yeah, they're replacing it every so often.
Two things. For people who are interested in learning more about water filtration, MWRD, so the Water Reclamation District that does the sewage and stormwater treatment, they offer a monthly video tour. And it's kind of cool, they'll it varies a little bit each month, but they show you how the different parts of the equipment that they operate work. And they've even done one where they take you down in the deep tunnel system and kind of walk around on there. So that's an interesting opportunity where they show you. And they take a lot of questions and it's interesting. And then as far as water filtration, any Chicagoan can call the city and ask to have your house tested for lead. When they do that, you may also be eligible for a filter system. It's not fancy, it's basically a quarter pitcher, but you can get that for free from the city.
if you qualify. Yeah, so anybody can call and ask for that. You can do it through 311 or you can call the water department directly.
Yeah, those filters are really critical for lead, especially for children. But then, yeah, these other.
So in the same way that the impacts of these problems of trash in the water affect communities unjustly, so too are the solutions, like you said, those are more expensive.
Right.
So access to solutions are also unjust sometimes. And in studying sustainability and stuff, I've been learning about extended producer responsibility and policies that put the costs of addressing pollution onto the polluters. So I'm wondering if you know about Illinois state level progress towards this.
Right. So there's this thing called extended producer responsibility, which is basically saying a company like Amazon or Coca-Cola or other companies that are producing plastic products that are very short-lived and end up as trash, that those companies have to have a plan for what happens to their waste, and they have to pay for that. So this is now just started happening in Oregon and in California. The state laws have passed and they're trying to start them up. It's been a lot of confusion from what I hear in terms of how it's going to work and who's going to be paying and what sorts of policies are going to actually be effective. It's been proposed in Minnesota and now also in Illinois to put in some action. And it's saying that, I was saying that like we're not the ones throwing the water bottle on the ground, but we're responsible for it, and we are. But so are the companies that make those bottles. And this is saying very explicitly that those companies should have a role to play in cleaning it up, or at least making recyclability better, or coming up with other plans to reduce the environmental impacts of their single-use materials. So I know it's one of those things that has a lot of grassroots support and a lot of industry opposition, and so it's like sort of combative in that way. And it seems like once again the West Coast, like California and Oregon, will be a really test case to see how it goes. That's my understanding. Is that Chinese that we have? So they're talking about it here in the Midwest. If it happens in the Midwest, it'll be Illinois.
Does anybody here know the reason why Chicago decided, or at least in our neighborhood, decided to reduce the amount of times that they pick up the recycling bins? I think we used to have it weekly. Now it's like bi-weekly. And by the way, I have been tossing some of the recycle in the regular trash because it's just accumulating. If you go in our backyard, in our alleys, we see a lot of the time, like these blue bins are overflowing. And it just seems like if the city really cares about reducing the amount of waste, out, they would actually have not reduced the amount of time to frequency.
Yeah, that seems very, very logical. I can't speak to the scheduling of that. In terms of the efficacy of our plastic recycling system, it's pretty poor. On a sort of nationwide scale, we recycle something like 6 to 7% of plastic. Most of it is going to trash. I believe that's like 95% of it is going to trash. And part of it's because the system isn't made really to recycle plastic. There's all different kinds of materials, and there's different rules for food exposure for different materials on how that influences the recycling. And pre-pandemic, China used to take most of our plastic, and now they don't take it anymore, and no one really wants it. So there isn't a good market for these materials. So even there has to be someone who's willing to kind of take it and recycle it and make a profit. It's a business. And right now, that seems to be a really hard business to make a profit. So a lot of it should be thrown away, even from the recycling facilities. So it's not a great system. But recycling is good for glass and aluminum and cardboard. Those businesses are operable, and it's good to recycle those materials. And I'm always encouraging people to keep trying to recycle the plastic. Maybe the economics will change. Maybe the materials innovations will occur, or recycling innovations. But right now, the plastics recycling system is pretty poor.
Regarding the bins, please do let your ward office know about that, and you can also complain to 311. Another thing you can do is call and ask for an additional bin. 311 doesn't ask a lot of questions when you ask for more bins. So if maybe you and a couple of your neighbors do it,
if that helps.
Yeah, for some reason, we had two blue ones, and when they changed the program, they removed one of our extra bins.
Oh, well, there's your reason. You know, somebody took my bin, I need another one.
I mean, I understand that not much is, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, but from I guess, psychological,
It's something you can do.
do we actually feel like we're making a difference and it makes us more proactive in
And it might,
making a
some of
difference?
it might get recycled. And I think certainly the other materials, the glass and the aluminum, there is a good value in recyclables. We'll take those for sure, cardboard as well. So you should keep doing it.
And anything in the horizon for the different materials to replace plastic?
There's a lot of interest in this. I was at a conference where they were talking about like mushrooms, compostability for plastics without the PFAS, those so-called forever chemicals. It's kind of doesn't seem to be happening yet, but there's a lot of interest in, it seems to be a lot of entrepreneurship in that arena, so hopefully that'll continue. But it's also something where the opposition is that plastic is a fossil food product. It comes from the world, and so there is very strong opposition to alternatives, and that's real. And that's not just like conspiratorial thinking. That influences the marketplace and the laws around the products. So it's going to have to be, I think, to some extent, really grassroots folks like demanding.
Just talk about the business of recycling. Can you talk about like what actually happens and like who are the players and stuff like that? And just trying to understand if a majority of cost is sorting, like will there be opportunity for machines to be sorting our trash, and will that something positive on the horizon?
Well, I can't speak too much to it because I'm really not an expert in the sort of engineering of recycling or the business of it. I have this tangential association with it. But I do know there's innovations attempted to mechanize a lot of the challenging parts, which is the sorting. There's been, I was reading about this one idea to do sort of micro printing on plastics that could be read by sorters, that could sort the litter really sort of easily through automated lasers or something that really could read the labels better. So there are means, I think, to improve the system to make it more economically feasible. And hopefully that can make it better.
Then who are the players in Chicago usually?
Oh, the big company is Waste Management?
Right, like what's the life cycle of a bottle that I put in the blue bin?
I mean, I guess I can't speak to that.
Okay, yeah.
There's multiple different companies, but ultimately the industry, as far as I understand it, of recycled plastic is that it doesn't have much value, so someone has to buy it.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like it.
When it comes to the trash trap that we have in our community, so like I'm coming to understand that it's maybe less about quantity and more about evaluation, research of the types of trash that are getting collected at that exact location. Is there anything that, like is there any kind of like connection we can draw between like our trap and our neighborhood? Obviously that trash comes from literally anywhere that the river touches, but like, is there anything we should be like interested in as far as our own trap, or should we be like watching for in the future as far as like what our trap is contributing to the overall conversation, or what we're learning from the trap that's in our community?
Yeah, and ultimately that's our goal. Is we want to be able to understand at these locations what's the composition of the material, so we can better tailor the message about education to the community of people that are using that space. And so it kind of depends on what's there. For example, in the seabed in Wrigley Field, at the Wrigley Field, we find lots of little pieces of trash. That's a hard thing to manage. But we did find, many times we find these little wrappers for headphones for a tour bus company. And we were like, oh, this seems like we should tell someone this. It has the name in the cup that they park their buses right there by the river or something. So we said, we'll find a lot of these wrappers. There you go. Hopefully that can be a helpful bit of information that we're finding a way to the river. So potentially something like that could occur with labeling that might be of interest. But ultimately we're thinking about what's the community of people that are there and what are they potentially contributing that we could reduce, you know? And probably given our results for the other sites in the river and for the beaches, it's eating, drinking, smoking. You know, that picture I showed you of the isolated island in the Pacific, nobody lives at that place, but it's covered in trash. A country like that, they can't they can't stop that. It's coming from all over the world. But the trash in our own traps or on our own beaches, that is actually our trash. Like we can't blame that on another country in the world. It's just from us. It's our own community. That's kind of sad. But it also means that we have a solution as well. So that it's a local source and it's a local solution. So we can potentially address some of those if we know what the sources are.
Yeah. I'd be curious if there's gonna be anything related to, the industrial corridor sort of trash. But, could you remind me again what your timeline is in terms of like you're waiting for funding in order to install it and then you're gonna do a weekly sort of draw of the trash? Yeah, could you get a high level?
I mean, that's a plan. So we got the money in October, but then it was the government shutdown and then there was some rebudget. There's been a delay. So, we hope to have this rebudgeting situated as soon as possible and purchase the trash on the site. The plan was for this summer. I'm hopeful that we but ultimately, we want to get it in there. And Urban Rivers, which is a nonprofit group that installs those floating wetlands, will be the owner and sort of operator of that track. And so they run a bunch of volunteer programs out there to deal with their wetlands and engage the community, like through this organization as well. So we would be removing it as much as needed, to look at it. For our other traps, it's been about once a week. But I think that could also be weather dependent, especially for a place like this where we get these storms and there's combined sewers that overflow into the river, especially in the south part. And so it could fill up with material.
Do you get like an indicator when it's built up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think we're hoping that someone will be around.
Okay, cool. You just check.
A camera or like some sophisticated machinery would be nice, but at the moment, it's kind of a metal cage.
Sure.
That's what it's not a machine in the sense of like being electric or something.
Karen, you should tell them about your program.
Oh, so I run trash rebuilding in the apartment here in the neighborhood. We pick up trash and we build community at the same time. So we'd be very interested in, keeping tabs on when the trash trap gets installed, maybe doing an event, a little educational thing. Maybe people would want to get involved in helping sort it if you need that too. So yeah, I'd love to keep tabs on.
I love that name, Trash People.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks for giving all that trash. It's really great. So
Yeah.
yes, the answer for sure.
I have a question. What strategies do you foresee to realistically reduce demand for single-use plastics? So that requires major behavioral change.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's a good idea to just sub it out for other materials.
I know, yeah, exactly. And there's businesses and restaurants and things that worry about what those costs would be for alternative materials. So it has to be economically feasible as well as environmentally friendly, and that's a really tall order. So it's probably one that requires a lot of patience. I think ultimately it's directed at individual products. So where we see the most movement has been in plastic bags, also to some extent straws. And so that's two items. In Europe, they made a rule with we had a ton of bottle caps. We find a lot more caps than we do bottles, which is a math that doesn't really work, but somehow we do. And so those bottles are really mobile. And so now in Europe, they remain attached to the bottle. Have you seen these? Like, this is a new thing.
Yes,
And it's
I did not
because,
know why they were like that. So
Yeah,
it's because then the bottle cap doesn't escape and the whole thing gets managed as a piece of.
Like so,
Yeah, like it has a.
like so.
Yeah, so that's something that could be targeted at a specific product as well. So I think it's as many products as there are, there's probably that many kinds of substitutions or changes or slow alterations.
Any other questions for Tony? Okay.
Thank you guys for coming, you're really good to do.
Thank you. So we have just a few more announcements. We're going to talk about some upcoming neighborhood events here. So this Saturday, I forgot that this Saturday is the Dragon Boat Races at Kingstown Park, which is another cool event. But here in our neck of the woods, our neighbors at Perro are sponsoring a Make Your Own Dragonella event, which will be at the boathouse on Saturday at 11 o'clock. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Dragonella, it's kind of a party cruise, thing. It's specific to Mexico, and it's something that a lot of our neighbors would be familiar with, so this is an arts and crafts opportunity. On Saturday, July 11th, there'll be a cleanup. If you need to pick up if you need to pick up some trash after listening to this talk, there'll be a cleanup at Canal Origins Park. Show up at 10 o'clock. And then our programming in July, we usually meet here at the library, but now that we're hopefully having summer, we'd like to get outside. So in July, instead of meeting here, we'll be here at the same time, and we will have a walk down 35th Street to talk about the improvements coming to 35th Street. There'll be an opportunity to stop off in some of our neighborhood businesses, so to have dinner, to have an ice cream, to meet some of the owners, and to talk about art and improvements coming to the corridor. So we'll do that on Wednesday in our usual time slot, and then also on a Saturday morning. We'll get the details out about that shortly. And then monthly community potlucks at the playground have started. The first one was last night. It was a really good time. I had about around 30 people and a wide variety of dishes. So the next one of those will be on July 21st, and it's a great opportunity to come out and meet some neighbors just right next door here at the playground. So then that, thank you all for coming. There's some pizza left. Help yourself, pizza and wings. This is from L&L Pizza, which is down on Pershing. If you liked it, stop by and see them. Anything else?
All I had the cleanup on July 11th. The development council is part of the stewardship team for Canal Origins Park, and we partner with Friends of the Chicago River. And we do something similar to what Tim does, which is we collect trash from the park, and we also keep track of what kind of trash it is, and because Friends of the Chicago River is also doing research, just like Tim, to see what kind of trash. So it's a good time if we find cool, weird stuff. I found three coconuts across all of last year, which is weird. But it's a fun time, and you get to see the park that most of them takes. It's fishing night.
No, but
Those are all over the place. And I'm just.
Wednesday, July 15th, and maybe I didn't read the times when that's gonna happen.
So the times,
For Wednesday.
yeah, it'll be 6 or 6:30. We haven't sorted out the details yet, but it'll be at the dinner hour. So we'll have the walk, and then if people want to stay and eat together, or people want to eat and they come on the walk, that opportunity will be available.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Well, thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all for coming.